Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had bad ratings more than anything else, and he said a horrible thing about a great gentleman known as Charlie Kirk. And Jimmy Kimmel is not a talented person. He had very bad ratings, and they should have fired him a long time ago. So, you can call that free speech or not. He was fired for lack of talent.
Trump never expected what happened next. It all started the night two of America's sharpest entertainers used his own words against him on live television, while millions watched it unfold in real time. The whole thing began with a single magazine cover. Time released its latest issue, and instead of focusing on what was being presented as a major diplomatic success on the world stage, Trump became completely fixated on how he looked in the photo. He criticized the lighting, the shadows, the camera angle, and every little detail of the image, while barely mentioning the achievement the cover was supposed to highlight. Then, close to 2 o'clock in the morning, he posted online saying the article itself was decent. But the photo might be the worst picture ever taken of him. That one late-night post was all Jimmy Kimmel needed. The very next evening, Kimmel walked onto his stage holding that same magazine, and almost instantly, everyone in the audience could tell exactly where the moment was headed.
Back to 8 years old, where I used to sit in my room. Trump is toast.
I like that one.
Trump is toast. Yeah, man.
And so you just kind of digest the news of the
it's
day.
It's an affirmation.
I'm glad some good is coming out of this stuff. This is Robert Mueller.
Robert Mueller putting the squeeze on the president. Just to relieve the stress. You know what I mean? It's a stress reliever.
And here we have...
That's Space Force.
That's the Space Force, yeah.
That's the beginning of Space Force.
Kimmel pointed out how unusual it was that a president who had just signed what was described as a historic ceasefire in the Middle East seemed far more interested in criticizing a photograph than celebrating a moment of peace. The audience immediately burst into laughter, and he kept the jokes coming. He teased Trump for reading hidden meanings into ordinary details, joking that Trump had convinced himself a random strand on the magazine cover looked like a floating crown, when it was actually just part of the magazine's logo. Kimmel laughed that only Trump could look at a simple letter and somehow see a symbol of royalty. The crowd loved it because the joke had grown into something much bigger than a magazine cover. It became a funny but pointed comment about someone who appeared more focused on protecting his public image than paying attention to what was happening in the world around him. Then Kimmel shifted gears and started listing one complaint after another that Trump had made in recent months, from a grocery store logo and windmills to a celebrity he didn't like, and even an international award he never received. By the end, it had turned into a running joke about a man who always seemed to need a new reason to be upset, and that was exactly why the moment felt much bigger than an ordinary late-night comedy segment, especially with everything that had taken place only a few weeks before.
Also happens to be Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day, which is a federal holiday. Although with the government shutdown, every day now is a federal holiday. We're on day 13 with no end in sight. A majority of Americans blame Republicans for the shutdown. Republican leaders are still trying to blame Democrats for the shutdown, even though they control the House, the Senate, and the White House. It would be like Trump blaming January 6th on Joe Biden, which he actually did do yesterday.
A few weeks earlier, in September, Kimmel had returned to television after being taken off the air, and almost as soon as he was back, Trump went online claiming Kimmel had no talent, insisting he had been fired because of poor ratings and brushing him off completely. But the actual numbers told a very different story. Kimmel's return drew more than 6 million viewers, making it one of the biggest nights of his career. Instead of responding with anger, he turned the moment into comedy. Looking straight into the camera, he calmly asked the audience if they had ever heard of someone being fired over ratings on a random Wednesday. The joke landed instantly because it was delivered with quiet confidence, and it left little room for argument. Even some people who usually supported Trump admitted the punchline worked. As the conversation continued, it became clear that the situation surrounding Kimmel's time off the air was being portrayed as much more complicated than a simple dispute over television ratings.
Hatred of immigrants, contempt for the truth, greed, and the abuse of power. We are fighting those same evils today. And we need to be clear, shamelessness is not and will never be a superpower. It is the mark of a villain. Kidnapping children is not what great nations do. Almost half of America at this moment believes there is a sinister deep state diabolically plotting to what? Give them health care? We in America are misinformed.
The controversy grew even bigger when the head of the federal broadcasting regulator publicly warned that networks could face consequences if they failed to take action against Kimmel. Many critics saw those comments as a direct threat to free speech, arguing that a government official appeared to be using the power of the office to pressure private companies into silencing comedian. They pointed out that the language sounded far more like intimidation than the kind of statement people would normally expect from a federal regulator. Then, when White House officials tried to ease the backlash by saying the remarks were only meant as a joke, Trump complicated the situation himself. Within a day, he posted on social media claiming that ratings were the real reason Kimmel had been pushed out, directly contradicting the explanation his own team had just offered. Moments like these have always played into Kimmel's style. Rather than inventing attacks, he often builds his jokes around the public statements, social media posts, and contradictions of well-known figures, letting their own words become the punchline. Every late-night rant becomes fresh material. Every bold claim sets up another joke, and every denial creates another chance to replay what was actually said. With Trump posting so frequently and commenting on almost everything, Kimmel has had a constant stream of material to work with. And while Kimmel was turning those moments into comedy night after night, someone else had been making a similar point for years through paintings instead of punchlines.
It's hard to understand what's going on. I mean, I really, one minute you feel like, oh my gosh, this is going to be, now the landslide's going to start. And then there'll be some other weaselly little, sidestep they do or whatever it is. And, this administration is a rabid dog, and it's turning us upside down. And all, as far as I'm concerned, it's as obvious as the nose on your...
Jim Carrey, once known mainly for his wild comedy and unforgettable movie roles, gradually became something very different. He turned to political art, creating bold, often unsettling paintings as a way to process the chaos he believed was unfolding in modern politics. Years earlier, he appeared on Jimmy Kimmel's show carrying a collection of his own artwork, filled with vivid and exaggerated portraits of Trump and other political figures. Carrey explained that painting had become his way of documenting that moment in history, so people wouldn't forget what was happening around them. Some of the paintings were disturbing. Others carried a dark sense of humor, but they all shared the same idea. In his view, real art isn't meant to make people comfortable. It's meant to make them stop and think. He never hesitated to criticize what he saw as the most damaging parts of the political climate, arguing that certain voices were trying to convince Americans they were permanently divided when he believed they were simply being pushed to see each other that way. He also spoke openly about why the subject mattered so much to him. To Carrey, Trump represented a bully, someone who keeps taking and pushing until someone finally stands up to him. He compared it to the kid at school who steals your lunch, eats your snacks in front of you, and reads your private notes out loud just to embarrass you and make himself feel powerful. Even when critics accuse him of going too far, Carrey refused to back down, saying that staying silent in the face of a bully only allows that behavior to continue.
John Trump is guilty of 34 felony charges. On the first charge of falsifying business records.
Guilty.
On the second charge.
Guilty.
On the third charge.
Guilty.
On the next 31 charges.
Guilty, 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 guilty.
That's right. Guilty. Like that. Poor Donald Trump, 7 weeks of sleep farting, all down the drain, all for nothing. You do have to hand it to him. No president has ever been convicted more than Donald Trump. How long before he starts bragging about this?
That same fearless attitude showed up in one of Jim Carrey's most memorable television appearances, when he stepped into the role of Joe Biden opposite another actor playing Trump in a chaotic debate sketch. The performance captured the disorder of a real presidential debate so closely that it felt less like an exaggeration and more like a reflection of what people had already seen for themselves. One character struggled to keep the conversation on track, while the other constantly interrupted and bulldozed through every attempt at order, and audiences connected with it because the chaos felt so familiar. Then everything changed almost overnight. News broke that Trump had been found guilty on multiple felony charges, and late-night shows rushed to rewrite their monologues just minutes before going on air. the atmosphere shifted instantly. When Kimmel walked onto the stage that night, he wasn't holding his usual cue cards. He was holding the actual verdict. Before the jokes even started, he acknowledged how significant the moment was, and the audience responded with waves of laughter, applause, and a sense of release after months of nonstop tension. Outside the courtroom, Trump rejected the outcome, calling the trial rigged, blaming the system, and insisting that the real judgment would come from voters rather than a jury. But by then, the story had already taken on a life of its own. Kimmel turned the moment into comedy that spread everywhere, while Carrey had already spent years turning similar themes into artwork that kept people talking. Neither of them needed to exaggerate anything, because the events themselves were dramatic enough. What made their work so powerful was that, even though they used completely different forms of expression, they kept arriving at the same message. In their view, unchecked ego, unchecked power, and constant self-focus eventually catch up with anyone, whether that idea is delivered through a joke on live television or captured forever in a painting. Every time Trump defended himself, denied accusations, or lashed out at critics, he created even more material for that story. The harder he tried to control the narrative, the more it slipped away, because both Kimmel and Carrey built their approach around letting his own words and reactions speak for themselves, leaving audiences to draw their own conclusions. People shared Kimmel's clips, revisited Carrey's paintings, and discussed both side by side, turning them into some of the year's most talked about political commentary. As time went on, it became clear that these weren't two separate voices telling different stories. They were two artists working in completely different ways, reaching remarkably similar conclusions. Trump responded online by calling Kimmel washed up, dismissing the ratings, and criticizing Carrey's paintings as the work of an actor looking for attention. Yet every angry response only brought more attention to both men, giving fresh life to the very jokes and artwork he was trying to dismiss. Inside the studio, Kimmel stuck to the same calm style that had always worked, reading Trump's latest posts and letting the audience connect the dots without forcing the punchlines. Meanwhile, Carrey stayed mostly out of the spotlight, allowing his paintings to speak for him as galleries reported growing crowds, including many younger visitors who had first discovered his work through viral clips online. Together, without ever officially working as a team, they opened two different paths into the same conversation. One through fast-moving comedy that reached millions every night, and the other through artwork designed to stay with people long after they had seen it. Throughout it all, Trump seemed unaware that his own reactions kept fueling both stories. Every angry post extended the jokes. Every criticism of Kimmel reminded people of his ratings, and every insult aimed at Carrey encouraged more people to see the paintings for themselves. By the end of the year, both men had become symbols of how comedy and art could still shape public conversation during a time filled with constant political noise. Trump had spent years trying to control the headlines, but in this chapter, that control slipped away. He no longer decided how people remember the magazine cover, the verdict, the controversy, or the endless online posts, because one comedian with a magazine and one actor with a paintbrush had already helped shape that story in the public mind. In the end, they didn't need to shout to make their point. They simply knew exactly when and how to make it land.